Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be throwing together this old Russian armored car kit. Now, this kit's kind of worthless, it's very old and doesn't have a lot of details, so we're going to use it to make the diorama for this Object 279 a little more interesting. So, without further ado, let's start building up this kit. It's only got a few parts, so it's a pretty easy build. Getting into it, the kit comes with a little engine piece, and because this kit was so old, a lot of the seam lines were kind of messed up, so I ended up cutting down a lot of pieces and kind of reshaping them, make them fit just a little better onto the kit itself. And just kind of cutting them up and made them fit. Same with the main chassis of this kit here. It had a lot of flash and kind of extended plastic over where it normally would be, so I cut those down. And then once those parts are cleaned up, just kind of moving on to do the whole suspension and stuff of this kit. Now, this kit's pretty simple, but because it's just a side piece, I really didn't care or want to add any real other details to it. It's not supposed to be the focus of the diorama, so it's all fine. Then, just throwing the actual suspension and chassis onto the actual single molded body piece, and it fit pretty well. It did take a little bit of cutting down, as you kind of saw earlier, but it went in alright. After that's glued on, we're going to glue the exhaust piece onto the back, and it's just really throwing on some details. They'll never really be seen, because this kit will be kind of sunken into the mud on the diorama when we build it next week, so it won't really matter too much, but might as well throw the details in anyway. Then after that, we're going to throw in some of the interior details, because we're going to have some of the doors and hatches open on this. We do want to have some of those details, just so it doesn't look completely empty inside. And once again, with this kit being so simple, these all parts were pretty easy to just throw together and throw on. Here, throwing on a little ammo box. Now, I left only one ammo box on this, because this kit is supposed to look kind of abandoned and really damaged. I left some parts off and some parts kind of destroyed. Like you see here with this headlight, I put it on, but then I kind of bent it down and out of shape, not to where it would actually be pointing, and I just left the other light completely off, as if it had been broken off or destroyed. And just throwing on the little side marker lights too, just to kind of fill in those holes and add whatever little bits of detail. Even though this kit doesn't really need it, as I say, it's not really going to be the centerpiece. Then, moving on, we're going to put on the wheels onto this kit. Now, I kind of cut up the areas and the siding pieces just so I could fit the wheels in, not completely straight or just a little messed up, because I want it to look kind of crashed, but I'll be throwing this one wheel on, just gluing it up. This one I really throwed it on and put it as if it had been completely broken off and it was kind of just caught in the fender of the kit. Just kind of putting it in there, using some heavy-duty glue. And same on the front here, just so it's turned. I actually left one wheel off the kit, just to give that even more abandoned and destroyed look. And it came up pretty nice, making the kit look very destroyed. Then, after we're done those wheels, we move on to the actual top body sections. Now you can see here, there was some pretty major fitment issues with this kit. I don't even know how it was supposed to fit originally with all of the parts on, but they kind of just went on after cutting them up. Those areas really aren't going to be visible anyway, so just kind of cutting up the engine parts and everything just to make it fit in good. After that, we're just going to start doing some of the little interior bits. Here I'm just gluing on the steering wheel onto the inner frame and the inner housing of the kit, just to add a little bit more detail. Now, for how old this kit is, I was really impressed at the actual level of detail inside and kind of around. It was pretty surprising with all of the little parts and everything. And we're just going to get on to doing the turret and kind of all those things, gluing it up. This turret was actually just a one-piece construction. It was pretty easy to do. The actual body of the armored car wasn't as easy to do. It had a lot of kind of finicky problems getting it on, but oh well. Now we're going to glue on some of the hatches and doors to the side of the kit, and because I really want to make this look kind of abandoned and blown out, I glued all of these open or halfway open. Some I even just left completely off, just really to make and add to that destroyed aesthetic. Doing the exact same thing with the door here, just kind of putting some glue on the sides of it, getting it all set up and ready, and then gluing it on in a way that it's sitting open, and then once it kind of gets fit on, putting a little bit more of the cement on there just to help fit it up. Here I decided to kind of close the door, put some cement on it so it got set up, and then slowly from the back push the door open so it looked like it was blown out. And that all worked out pretty well. They were a little bit hard to place, but once you get enough cement on there, they work decently well. Now, these parts were of course not made to be left open really. They're not actually hinges, they're just the model imprint of hinges. So they weren't as easy as on some kits it is to make open hatches. Some kits really just have hatches that you can have open or closed, or even just completely work right out of the box. But with these, once again, because it's not the main centerpiece of this build, well then of this diorama, it's really just kind of a throw together kit. So they'll be fine and they'll work completely fine. You can see I really didn't clean up these parts as much as I would normally do. Once again, it really doesn't matter, as well as this kit is going to be covered in a lot of snow and mud details, really to help it fit in with the rest of the diorama. So that worked decently fine. Then, after all those hatches are on, there's just a few more little details to add on and kind of throw into the kit, just to kind of help everything out and make things a little bit more interesting. And of course, some of these little details I left off, some things I scraped off. As well here, you can see the machine gun mount for the top turret. I wanted to make this look abandoned, so I decided to drill that out. Now, because I had to use a big drill, I didn't actually show that or record it. I'll try in the next time to actually remember to record that, but it was a little bit difficult. But there you can see, now that the hole is completely drilled out, we can glue it on, and it now kind of just looks like it was an abandoned turret that they managed to recover the machine gun out of, which would be pretty likely. Then, we're just gonna, before we go into any paint or work like that, just test fit up the body onto the chassis, just to make sure it fits in snugly and looks all good. But then, we'll be on to paint. And so, starting with the painting, we're of course going to be just coating the kit in the normal primer I always use, just the mission model stuff, and getting it really good and coated. Now this kit has a lot of small and hard to reach areas, so really making sure to get into all of those tough areas, really make it work good, get it all together. And just doing the whole chassis in it, getting it all good, as well as then coming back and coating it all in a black coat. Now this will really help with the rusting effects that we'll be doing afterwards. And it'll make it kind of all unified, because underneath rust it isn't a light surface, it'll be a dark surface, and it really helps with all of that little stuff. And doing the exact same to the whole chassis and top part of this, making sure to get into all of those hard to reach areas inside the cabin area of the kit, which were fairly difficult to get at, but once with getting a little bit of airbrushing, you can get at them. Then we're going to move on to start doing the rusting effects. Now, I coated the entire kit in these rust effects using the same AK rust tones that I've been using for a while now, just dark and light crusted rust deposits, and just kind of covering the whole kit with it. Because I will be spraying over this with chipping fluid and then actual paint, you really just want to make sure everything's covered, everything's all good, and we'll see. This will be my first time doing any rust effects like this with the chipping method, so it's really interesting to see how it came out. And then just doing the same thing I always do with a fairly strongly bristled paintbrush and just kind of stippling on those lighter rust effects. Doing that on both the lower section and the upper section, the cabin area of the vehicle, just to get the whole thing looking in a good rust tone. And just kind of blending it all in, making it look good. And we can now see that this looks like a very rusted out and destroyed thing, so we're going to spray it all over now with those AK worn effects. And once doing that, not really showing it here because you guys have seen airbrushing on this channel before, I start off with just a soft bristled paintbrush here, and it wasn't really working. I don't know if I didn't do enough chipping effects. I mean, I've never used it before, but it wasn't really coming off. You can see it was coming off in little chunks, which for a lesser rusted out kit would be good, but I wanted this to be very rusted out. So as you can see here, I started using the head of an old toothbrush, and the stronger bristles on that really started to get those rust effects and worn effects really pushed off. And I ended up knocking off a little detail, but we can just glue that on later. So really just going over the whole kit now with that toothbrush, grinding off that top layer of normal green paint and exposing all of those rusted effects underneath. And this worked out really well. I say this is my first time using this method of chipping fluid, or as AK calls it, worn effects, and it really came out nice, making pretty easy and quick work of rust effects and giving it a nice depth to it because the rust is actually on a lower level than the paint, which I really like to see. And of course, getting into all of those little areas, especially areas that would be close to the ground or would get rusted or have been scuffed before this thing was crashed or kind of abandoned. That's where rust really would start from. So really wanted to get in there and kind of start doing that with all of those rust effects. Then once that's all done, we're going to move on to kind of doing the mud here and really muddying this thing up. I didn't muddy it up too much because we're going to be doing much more of that when we actually put this onto the diorama next week. So just kind of giving it a preliminary coat, covering off some of the areas that would be harder to get at once it's on the diorama, and making sure the lower bits of this thing really are all muddy. After that, we're going to be going in with the same snow effects that we used on the Object 279, and just kind of coating it, making it really look like there's a lot of built-up snow here, like it's been abandoned for a while, filling in all of those crevices where snow would really build up in there. And then we're going to add some of this winter wash, this winter streaking grime from AK. Of course, I went through the winter weathering process much more in detail on the last episode, weathering and finishing up the Object 279, and made it really look good. So doing the exact same thing, streaking it on and brushing it off and kind of blending it in with some paint thinner after it's set and dried for a little bit. This really gives the entire kit just a nice grimy look to it, not like it's just somehow clean rust or something. And it really helps unify all of the parts and different weathering effects together into a good thing. Then we're going to do the final step for winter weathering that I like to do. That's taking a very washed down, diluted white acrylic paint and just kind of smearing it all over the model. This really helps make it look kind of cold. And like I say, if you want a much more in-depth thing on how I did my winter weathering, check out the previous video on the Object 279. So with that done, and just a nice flat clear coat, we're pretty much done here. This thing came out really nice for just a little side piece to have on the edge of a model display, and so I really like how it came out. Anyway, if you like this video, remember to like it. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them down in the comment section below. And if you want to see more and the finale of this series coming next week, go down and subscribe to the channel and turn on that notification bell just so you're notified right when it comes out. I'll see you in the next one.